how are you protecting it if it's KYC and it's in your name, because legally they can get to that asset and take part of your Bitcoin. You've got to put it in a structure that's going to survive those years, and we could actually turn around and not trigger a tax event. You hold that asset and it's yours and no one can take it away from you. So what we did was we created a 200-year plan. So there's no reason why we can't time lock into the future.
Bitcoin may or may not be for them. That's for them to decide.
I always plan for a recession, or the country decides to do a state of emergency for whatever reasons, because money has the biggest impact on our life at the end of the day, whether we believe it or not. You've got a chance to change your future. And I suppose for some people it will be, I just need to survive. And if you can get to that point, then you're self-sovereign. It's up to you to change it. And if you move across into that space, you'll create a different life.
Paul, you bailed me up yesterday and you started talking about high net worth individuals protecting your Bitcoin stack. I thought I was doing pretty well. I haven't stopped thinking about it for the past 24 hours there. And basically what I gained from the conversation is having Bitcoin and self-custody, multi-sig and stuff, while that's all well and good, it's probably not the best way to be able to protect the world's hardest asset. So what is the best way, or what are some options that people with high net worth status, traditionally, what routes are they going down to be able to protect any type of asset, and then how does that translate to Bitcoin?
Great question, and thank you for your ear yesterday as well too, because I know it tuned in.
Oh, it was fascinating, man.
One of the things that my wife and I have always done, even prior to Bitcoin, is we learnt years ago that you can create your future that you want for your family and everything else, but you've got to protect your asset. If you don't protect your asset, then potentially you can lose it at any stage. So some people will take out an insurance policy, for instance, right? So if their house burns down, they've got that insurance policy, you're protecting your asset. But when you take it further, you really have to learn what wealthy people do. And for us, even though I don't class ourselves as wealthy people, we always learned to protect our asset and create another safety net. And so we kept creating safety nets. So when we, for instance, when we started our first business, we put that in a company and a trust. And with the land underneath it, we also put that in a separate company and trust. So therefore, if something happened in the future where something that we never thought of in the business and someone tried to sue us or something like that, well then it only affected the business, but it didn't affect the land underneath. So we protected the assets moving forward. So we've always done that in our life, is not only accumulate assets where we can, but always take the time to do what we can to protect that asset as well too.
Understood.
So when it came to Bitcoin and we learned about Bitcoin, we then realised that most Bitcoiners, and in the Bitcoin space, they talk about taking the coins off the exchange and put it into cold storage. Most people take basic steps to move it from an exchange maybe into a hot wallet and then to a desktop wallet and then into cold storage. But for us, we needed to learn that and do that first. But then once we had it into cold storage, most Bitcoiners think, that's it, I've done it and that's fine. But then there's other complications that come to that, is when you protect your seed phrase, then if something happened to you, then if you don't have a will, for instance, right, you need to have a will, otherwise it's just going to be lost forever. But if you then have a will, you have it into cold storage, then how are you protecting it if it's KYC and it's in your name? Then you could be saying, well, we're fine, we're good, no problems. But one day you could be driving down the road and have a car accident in the future, and hopefully you don't. But if it did happen and someone sued you, they're going to come after your Bitcoin. They're going to come, and you might think, well, that's fine, I've got it in a cold storage. But if they dig deeper and find that you've taken it off an exchange or something like that, and they realise that you've got Bitcoin, then you're not protecting your asset, because legally they can get to that asset and take part of your Bitcoin. So what we've done is we've actually turned around and taken our KYC Bitcoin from our personal names that we originally started off with, and we've moved it into a company and trust. So therefore, it's not in our personal names. We've protected it more, so it's like it's in an extra safety vault or whatever you want to call it. So therefore, if something happened in our life and we had that car accident and we caused some harm to someone, not deliberately, but someone came after us and said, well, we're going to sue you, well, we've protected our asset. The only asset that we have at the moment is our primary place of residence that is in our name. Everything else is not in our name. And that's a legal way to protect your asset. You've worked hard for it. You've created assets in your life that you want to pass down to not only the next generation, but maybe your children's children's children. You've got to put it in a structure that's going to survive those years, and you should protect it.
Okay, so for someone that hears this, it sounds well and good. They've just bought Bitcoin on the exchange, they've sent it to their wallet, and they'd like to set up a trust. We don't need to go into the nuances or intricacies of setting up a trust. Are they just giving it to the trust for free, or are they selling it to the trust, or how does that move, say, in my example, from my cold wallet into the trust cold wallet? How's that shift happen, and what happens in those moments?
So I suppose I can talk about what happened with us. So we had everything in cold storage that was in our name, and this was going back maybe 8 months or so ago, and we thought that was fine. But we always, as we had in the conversation, we always look into the future. So if you look into the future and you understand Bitcoin, we knew that it was going to go up quite a lot in the next 2 years. So what we did was realise that it was vulnerable. So what we did was we put it into a multi-sig system, where we use the Bitcoin Advisor. We put it, so we've got one key, Bitcoin Advisor's got another one, and the other one's in Unchained Capital.
Yep.
So what we did was we had that, when we moved that, we had it in our own personal names. But now that we know that what's going to happen, and going back 6 months ago, we turned around and said, we need to move it from our personal names into our own trust. So we set up the trust. We went to our accountant and we basically told them everything that we had, as in when we brought everything. And their advice was we could actually move it from because we brought it the high, all the way down, back up again. So the average was X, and we could actually turn around and not trigger a tax event by moving it into a trust now. But if we would have, back then, but if we would have waited whilst it goes up to 100,000, then, and to do it then, or even 150,000, we would trigger a taxable event. So we actually planned for the future, but what we also did, we moved it and we created more security in the sense that we protected the asset even further by putting in a company and trust and that structure for the future. We've also done for our daughter as well too. So
really quickly, ladies and gentlemen, I've teamed up with the Bitcoin Way. This is the professional Bitcoin IT team. They can help you master your Bitcoin self-custody. Safety Namus, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, also recommends this professional Bitcoin IT cybersecurity team. Their guys are absolutely amazing. They can help you set up a node, protect your stack, get your Bitcoin off the exchange. Make sure that you are following best practices. Number one, that it's air-gapped. If you don't know what that means, I've put their details below for you. If you're worried about SIM swaps, reach out to the Bitcoin Way. Maybe you just want to know that you are doing the best thing. You're doing all the little tricks within your device to be able to make sure nobody can ever get into your Bitcoin, have any access. If you've got any queries about connecting to public USB and charging points, connecting to rogue Wi-Fi access points or malware-infected USB cables and flash drives, reach out to the Bitcoin cybersecurity team, the Bitcoin Way. Free 30-minute call. They are at the top of the description.
Our daughter had it in her own name as well, and so we did the same thing. We set up a structure for her, company and trust, moved it across, no problems at all, didn't trigger a tax event or anything at all. Now that it's gone up, doing it now means that it's safer, secure. So our daughter is a teenager at the moment. But if she gets into a relationship in the future, her assets are fully protected if that relationship doesn't work out.
Okay.
And that's, I suppose, what we were talking about.
Yep.
yesterday.
And with your daughter being a teenager, does that just mean anybody can set up a trust, or I imagine being under the age of 18, maybe there's a little bit more nuance to the conversation?
Absolutely. So the answer is no. She can't set up a company and trust until she's 18.
Okay.
But when I spoke to our accountant, what happened was that she said she can't do it until she's 18, but what you can do is we can set it up now. You, me, and my wife can be the trustees of the company and trust, and when she's 18, then she becomes the trustee of that trust, but all her assets that go in there are protected.
Perfect.
For the future.
And with this trust, obviously the BlackRock ETFs are now on the market. Very easy way to be able to get price exposure to Bitcoin. Should they be holding cold storage Bitcoin within the trust as a vehicle for a long term, or should they be holding just the ETF for ease?
Look, I think it's personal choice. For a lot of people, they will not self-custody their Bitcoin moving forward. The ones that are in it now understand that cold storage and self-custody is really, really important. And that still means the same for the people in the future. But most people are afraid of self-custody because you're becoming totally responsible for your whole assets. When most of the world isn't used to doing that. They use a bank, they use an ETF and so forth. So I think from my perspective, if an ETF is really comfortable for you, use it. But once you understand the asset that you've got as Bitcoin, maybe start off with the ETF, but then what you want is you want to self-custody some Bitcoin as well too. Because at the end of the day, when you self-custody Bitcoin, you hold that asset and it's yours and no one can take it away from you. When you've got an ETF, they can change the rules on you anytime. No different to owning a share in a company. You have no control over it. But when you self-custody Bitcoin, you control everything. And that is so empowering and so important. So I encourage people, if they want to go down the ETF because it's easy, do that. But take the time to say, well, maybe what we need to do, instead of having everything in one basket, let's take a little slice and just try a little bit of self-custody, because then you're creating another safety net. Right?
Yeah.
And the more safety nets we create with our wealth creation and our future, then if something happens, then okay, you might have to use one safety net, or one safety net gets attacked in some way. But protect it. The more safety nets you've got, you're protecting your future. You're protecting not your future, your children's 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 future. And that's the responsibility I think we should have.
Right at the start of this podcast, Paul, you said that you wouldn't class yourself as a high net worth individual or a wealthy person. Believe the rest of the world probably would. Beyond a doubt. One thing that I found very interesting with our conversation yesterday, and I believe this is probably where you've gotten to at this stage of life, is you're not just thinking about number go up this year or next year, but you're looking many, many years into the future. And it was already quite extraordinary how far out you were looking, but Bitcoin changed that in such a remarkable way. Would you be able to dive into where your time frame has shifted now from where it was?
And this might freak a few people out.
It's pretty crazy.
Prior to Bitcoin, my wife and I, who's the most amazing human in the whole wide world, we started a business. And it was very successful, and it was hard. We worked 7 days a week, put our blood, sweat and tears into it, and then we created a second business as well too, and did the same thing. Today we work on those businesses, but what we did was we needed to make sure that our work was going to, I suppose, not create a legacy. It did, but we had the opportunity to create something really, really special. So what we did was we created a 200-year plan. And the reason why, and it wasn't my thought, it was something that I heard someone else did on a podcast. And when I heard it, I sort of related it to our world and thought, if we had a 200-year plan, how would that change our decision-making process? And in that, and cut a long story short, we have one of our businesses is on 12 acres. It's on the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria, in Australia. And we realised that it's in a green wedge. If, because of population coming in or immigration coming in or whatever it is, at some point they change the regulations and change it from green wedge to residential or something like that, our business wouldn't exist anymore because they'd carve up all those blocks into smaller blocks. And because what our business is, it makes a bit of noise. And so we would lose the goose that laid the golden egg. And so that allowed us to turn around and go, well, there's a threat there for our business and our livelihood because it gives us an income stream for life. And then so what we did was we actually brought we created another business 15 minutes away from that business that has a completely different zoning on it. So, and it also, by doing that, it actually supported our first business to support the second one as well too. So that's how the 200-year plan started. But then we got into Bitcoin, we understood Bitcoin. So just recently, I was thinking more about the future, but not just 200 years out. I've actually changed it from 200 to 500 years. And the reason why in the Bitcoin space, and I call it proof of thought. So if we look out into the future, then if you've got Bitcoin, there's no reason why you can't actually make a difference now or think about now where you can actually take care of not just your children's, not just through your life, but your children's life. Or even further than that, if you don't have children, your nephew's life or whatever. So there's no reason why we can't time lock into the future, or we can't set up a structure now or a foundation now that has rules around the Bitcoin it has. But we have the opportunity to put that all the way out. So most people just think about now in their life, and including Bitcoiners. But we all have the opportunity to basically plan for the futures. And if that's to do with land, water, energy, food, finances, or anything at all. So why not take that opportunity to do that?
I believe it's really important that people do think and study, and then when they hear these new ideas, is progress down these rabbit holes, even if, like myself yesterday, maybe even a little bit dismissive of the idea and think, I actually need to step back a little bit, and I need to think, and I need to contemplate, and I need to find out more questions. And it may or may not be the right thing for me, but I'm not going to find out that unless I do the proof of work. And I believe we see the same thing with like no coiners versus Bitcoiners, is Bitcoin may or may not be for them. That's for them to decide only after they've undertaken the study. They can't say, no, Bitcoin's not for me, if they don't understand what they're saying no to. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. This year, 2024, is a pretty interesting year. The ETFs and stuff came out. We've got a lot of elections happening, interest rates. What are some of the things that you're looking at for this year in regards to your own businesses that are fiat related, but also in regards to Bitcoin, and then going out through the cycle and the coming cycle as well?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. I suppose every single day my mind is taken up with not just what's happening in our business and where that's heading, and what's affecting those business, because obviously we have a lot of customers, and obviously high inflation and cost of living and all that is certainly having an impact on most people in this country anyhow. And that, so when it comes to business, we have to have a lot of empathy around that. So we have to keep tweaking what we're doing, how we're doing it. I always plan for a recession. in our business all the time. It's part of that 200-year plan. I now have a pandemic in that plan as well too.
Clever.
Or something that, the state or the country decides to do a state of emergency for whatever reasons type thing. So we're always planning ahead to make sure that we have the reserves to get us through those times. And I think everyone should plan for that, not just in business, but in their personal life as well too. My mind always focuses on the future, and because if I look out into the future and see if we keep doing what we're doing today, then we can sort of predict the future in our life and even past our own life. And if we like what we see, then we can keep doing what we do. But what I like to do is and my wife as well too, is to try to look out in the future. What is it today that's going to, what's happening today that's going to affect the future? What's in our control and what might be out of our control. I focus on what's in our control. That's why we build all these safety nets, right? So depending on where you are in your life, then it means something different to you as well too. What I do know is if you can save money, which I know for most people is really difficult now, and it's tough, and it's going to be tough for a long while, but you've got to have a look at your own circumstances and try to find a way. Is there an opportunity here where we can spend less than what we earn? Or we've got to find a way to earn more and spend less. If you can get to a point where you can save some money, the best thing is to save your money in Bitcoin. And when I say Bitcoin, I mean Satoshis. So it's little bits of amounts, and it might be $10 a week. But you've got a greater chance of getting ahead by putting your savings into something that's going to always add value and not depreciate. And if we take the time, because money has the biggest impact on our life at the end of the day, whether we believe it or not. If we take the time to get a bit educated in how money works, how the money printer works, and how that affects your life, whether it's inflation or not, then you'll have a better understanding of what you could do with your money and make the best of that. Put time and energy in that, and then you've got a chance to change your future. And if you can change your future and make those decisions, then you're going to create a better future for your family, for yourself, for your children, because then as a parent, then if you're the example to them, they will honour that and they will see that example, and then you're going to create a better future anyhow.
Most certainly. One thing that I'm really excited about is, shout out to Daz B bringing little Bitcoiners into the world, but all Bitcoiners bringing Bitcoiners in the world. They're growing up with a solid, remarkable foundation based in truth from the very beginning. That's amazing. What I will do is I'll link your contact details below, but what takeaway or what message for people going into, we're already in 2024, the year of chaos is what it's been labelled as potentially, but you're looking out 200, 500 years. Say for the next 12, 18, 24 months, where should people really be focusing?
I think for everyone's journey is completely different. And everyone's in a different place right now. And I suppose for some people it will be, I just need to survive. And I think they should focus on what's in their life, what they don't need in their life, and do the best at surviving, but put time into the space of understanding why things are happening. For people that have businesses or have some savings, look into Bitcoin, because it's the only thing that can really, it's going to help them into the future. For me, where we're at, we focus on that 200 to 500 year plan. So what's important to us is we understand Bitcoin, we know what it is, we're really comfortable with it. We keep creating the safety nets for it, and we keep reviewing those safety nets as well too, because there's more things happening, not just now, but in the future that we don't know about, that are going to help us secure it more or come up with a different version of whatever that's going to be. So I've got it on our whiteboard. I write everything down. So on our whiteboard, between now and the next 5 years, Bitcoin is one part of the equation. But I think the other part of the equation is our food and our lifestyle. We need to protect the food that we consume. We need to have land. We need to then have water. And we need to control our energy, right? So if we have Bitcoin and then we have the land to have the food that we want to consume, whether it's chicken or beef or whatever it is, and if we have water on the property, then we can control our energy and our power. So the human race, if you want self-sovereignty at some point, you need to have Bitcoin. You need to turn around and have some land. You need to control the food, the environment that you're in, and you need water and you need a power source. And if you can get to that point, then you're self-sovereign. And no matter what the government does, and no disrespect to them, they might believe that they're doing the best thing. But at the end of the day, they're going to make the decisions that they make, and it's either going to be good or bad for you. You've got to take personal responsibility for your life. No one's going to save you. You're the only one that's going to save you. You're the only one that's going to create the freedom that you want to have, whether it's financial freedom or whatever it is. You have to make that choice to put time in that environment, and you can create any outcome that you want. But you've got to choose it, and you've got to move to that space and then move forward in that space. But it's only you that can do that.
It's pretty interesting when you tell people only they can save themselves, or the only way they can be self-sovereign is through their own proof of work. That sounds a little bit scary, but when you start on the adventure, or you start on that journey, then it turns into an adventure, and you get so excited about it, and you get these little things. You get Bitcoin, and then you start looking at land, or if land's too far out of the equation at the moment, you start changing your diets and just drinking, never drinking tap water, for example, and then trying to move to spring water only and fluoride and calcium free. And while it sounds pretty harsh, you need to take 100% self-responsibility. When you do that and start making choices that benefit you, your life gets better really quickly, very quickly. It's been such a pleasure. I'll put all your links below for everyone to be able to get in contact and find out more. But thank you so much, Paul. And like I said, I bailed me up yesterday, and I was like, oh yeah, my mind is just blowing, and had a little bit of a conversation with my wife who's back home as well. But we'll definitely be in contact, and I'll be talking to Lou a lot more as well.
Look, my absolute pleasure. I think that everyone has a life. It's their life, and I value that 100%. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. It's your life, it's your choice, and I respect your choices no matter what. So I'm not saying that you have to do any of this. What I am saying that we all have choices in life. If we don't like what we have right now or where our situation is, all I'm saying is there are other choices you can make, but you've got to move to those choices.
That's right.
And you've got to put time and energy in that space, and you can change anything you want in life. And that's what a lot of people don't realise. And if you want to change something, it's up to you to change it. And if you move across into that space, you'll create a different life. Maybe you've got to step back and just go 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever it is. But whatever it is for you, you can do it. It's up to you.
100% agree. This one is for you, Paul.
Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Cheers.